Welcome to this episode of YouTube where we want to wish you a happy new year, and we're going to highlight the great events that happened over the last year. The first and foremost is Giselle was hired here as a curator in training and will be taking over here in January 2024. We also had a fox that got into the enclosure in last January. The snow was a little bit deep, so those smaller predators had a harder time getting food, so they took the risk to come into a wolf pen to get some food. By February, we were watching Rika supposedly maturing to an adult, but with the absence of her own litter mates to play and tug of war and kind of roughhouse with, she chose to go backwards a little bit and act like a yearling herself again with Kaz and Blackstone. And you can see here the immature faces of those yearlings. They had a lot of growing to do, and that growing can tap a body's energy. And here's Blackstone doing what young wolves do when they spend a lot of time roughhousing, is nodding off in the sun on a warm bed of hay. We were starting to see some hair issues with Axel. He was losing some hair. It was really coarse. Even watched the ravens try to pull some hair out to make a nest. Since we use a parasite treatment year-round, we didn't think his hair loss was a coat condition was related to an external parasite like mange, which some of the wild wolves have. We know that it can be spread, so we're always kind of aware of that. And this was a pup that was struggling. Well, again, last winter had a lot of snow. It was tough on some of the younger animals. Didn't make it, and this pup was probably likely one of them. But you can see it's kind of seeking refuge. So by March, the snow kept coming, and here is the pack holding area den. Fortunately, we didn't have anyone in retirement who needed to rely on those dens. That would have been a lot of shoveling. But in March is the pre-denning season for wolves, and we had another wolf show up outside the fence that got the interest of the wolves, kind of stimulated at the fence. This one wasn't mangy. It looked fairly healthy. We think it was probably just a yearling who may have been hanging out while his parents may have been pre-denning. So typically in March, the wild wolves might be getting ready to whelp. In April, they may be selecting dens. So this guy looked healthy. He looked young. He looked a lot like a juvenile wolf. Piqued the interest of the ambassador wolves, but had a secondary fence to keep him away from the pack. And then we started to see in April Rika, again, trying to be a little bit more mature, showing her dominance over Blackstone there with kind of a squash, sitting on top of him. Not the most finessed move, but certainly it was a move to being a little bit more mature. April 6th was Kaz and Blackstone's first birthday, and they got a birthday cake, and it is a kickoff for our Ambassador Wolf birthday fundraisers that helped us get some more surveillance cameras, and there's a lot of things that we see on our surveillance cameras. This is a mature bald eagle and ravens feeding on a little bit of deer carcass left in the enclosure. In northern Minnesota, there are eagles that winter all year long that are frequent of the exhibit, but these particular eagles were very aggressively hungry, and there was an immature bald eagle as well with this mature bald eagle, and these might have been eagles that were migrating back looking for open water and fishing opportunities, and we still had ice on the lakes in April. We had a very late winter in the 2022-2023 winter, so we saw that with how much snow we had, how much ice we had in late April, and again with these eagles coming back in looking for food resources, we know that there were a lot of things hungry in the woods at that time. So the other thing that we noticed was that, again, the snow wasn't going. We were having a lot of melt where during the day and ice at night, and so we saw the pack, except Axel, coming into the medical pen to be able to get some relief from the wet conditions of freezing, thawing that were typical of that late April weather. And it seems like wolves were really anxious for spring, and May started out with a lot of social rally howling. And this is Kaz with his first shedding. Blackstone and Kaz would be their first time having their undercoat made into a product for the auction in 2024. So, like I said, we brushed that undercoat out that they shed every year. We have some great artisans who take that hair, clean it, card it, spin it, and make some wonderful products for our Wolf Care auction. And this year's auction starts on February 26th and runs until March 10th, where some of that hair is available. Speaking of hair, we did see Axel during that time frame. As everybody else was shedding normally, Axel was not only losing his undercoat, but he was losing some guard hairs. And so that was a concern for us, and we ended up doing some medical exams to be able to diagnose him and get him on the right path. But to help with cooling off the wolves, when they've got that thick undercoat, we always get a pile of sand in that the wolves can investigate and help cool off. They do their own shoveling, so we don't have to really deal with it much. The other thing that happened, everybody else is out looking for habitat. Here's a snowshoe hare that came into the exhibit in May. The wolves didn't notice it, and the hare exited unscathed. With June, we noticed a bug season that was beyond anything we could remember, and the wolves were irritated by especially black flies, sandflies, gnats, whatever you want to call them. They were in the wolves' ears, in their eyes, problematic. So they were all coming in the building every morning. That's a typical routine for us to get the wolves weighed, but for the wolves, it was a reprieve from the bugs. So we started to modify things a little bit, leaving an industrial fan that blew the bugs out of the building and actually left that open overnight. And this is Blackstone really taking advantage of having that bug relief and making sure that he was comfortable. It was a nice cool floor. June got to be very warm before the wolves finished shedding, and that can make animals overheat. And so the nice cool floor combined with a nice fan blowing the bugs off was a perfect place for Blackstone to rest. By July, we're already in the point of doing multiple enrichments throughout the day to be able to stimulate the wolves. And the most favorite enrichment is the 4th of July, when we bring out pails of snow that we save the previous winter. We put some Gatorade, give the wolves a little electrolytes, red, white, and blue Gatorade, and we bring it out for the 4th of July weekend. And the wolves really do enjoy having that relief of snow when temperatures get above and beyond what the wolves feel comfortable with. You'll notice here they're in their summer coats. You can see quite a bit of difference. A little bit of a scab there on Kaz. He actually got some pine pitch stuck on his coat, and he decided to rip it off and ripped off some of his hair. So that took a little bit of time to heal. Always conscientious about flies, if there's any kind of open wounds or anything like that. Wolves are pretty resilient. He didn't care whatsoever. Like I said, he was the one who kind of tore off the patch of pitch and left that open spot to be able to heal. Scent rolling is a pretty common thing for the wolves to do. Other enrichments as we go in later into the fall. August tends to be warmest time of the year. We really want to get those wolves into the pond, and so we're using anything, meat, ice cubes, sticks, you name it, anything to get the wolves to walk into that water to be able to cool themselves off. So we use a filter system, a UV filter system, and it's in the pump house, and that circulates water, runs the water through a UV bulb to try to zap that algae and circulate it to the upper pond, and it comes back down. And you can see it does its job. It does a fairly good job, and you can really see the definition when the wolves go in the water. You can actually see how clean and clear that water is. One thing that we did notice as we, for August, kind of turned more into the fall, is that Rika started to focus a little bit more on Blackstone and a little bit more dominance, preferring Kaz over Blackstone. and really setting the tone for Blackstone to become what we consider the Omega or bottom ranking pack member. And you would see that tail grab there resulted in Blackstone getting a little bit of frustration, and frustration for wolves can often be seen with them chewing on branches, or sometimes if it's really a challenging time for them, they might lick on their feet or on their paws or on their legs. But in this case, he just kind of chewed on some branches, so it was real critical that the wolf care team was aware of this and had a lot of distractions available to kind of break the focus away. One of the distractions, we decided to make a scarecrow out of bison hide and frozen hay. And you can see what's called neophobic behavior. That neophobic behavior means that they're afraid of new stimuli. And it was interesting to us. So even though Blackstone was kind of the Omega and people would think he'd be the most skittish, he was the most confident with that scarecrow. Axel took off with the head. Kaz a little bit intimidated, but Blackstone, Rika, pretty comfortable with it, not having any issues, and they all seemed to be able to run away with a piece of bison hide, and that was kind of the objective. By October, Rika really starting to mature, starting to show preference for Kaz, and you see a lot of rubbing her chin, a lot of social greeting, Rika doing her famous wrist grab, paw, Kaz doing a write-up on Rika, just a lot of real social behavior between the two of them, and Rika doing what's called an invite chase, spring down, and Chase has, kind of invite Kaz to chase her. And who can forget that October surveillance camera footage of the skunk getting into the exhibit pack? Certainly not the wolf care team members, who every time it rained for about a month afterwards, the wolves relived that odor that Kaz experienced firsthand from this skunk trying to elude him. The first snow to really cover the ground was in late October, right before Halloween, and we also at that time really saw Axel's hair develop a thick winter coat. So based on the sebaceous gland issue that we had, he was prescribed medication. That medication really was apparent that it was giving him a good winter coat to be able to tolerate the upcoming colder weather for the 2023-2024 winter. November was looking like we'd have a normal winter with a good coating of snow, and certainly we saw the pack settling into pack dynamics. Blackstone was able to deal with his lower ranking status primarily by sticking close to Grayson. He, as like most Omegas, pretty much a fun-loving, jumping at snowflakes. You don't have a lot to worry about when you're at the bottom of the pack, not like the top of the pack that has to keep orders. So he kind of came to terms with it and really showed all the wolf care team members just what his true personality was. And by late November, we really started to see a change in Grayson, and that change was more assertive, definitely higher tails, postures, getting involved a little bit with Rika and Kaz, and being a little bit more assertive there. Speaking of assertive, this December clip captured not a lot of activity physically, but a coyote that was letting off some kind of an alarm signal. And if you listen closely, the coyote howls triggers the sled dogs across the road, which ends up with the exhibit pack letting out some low-throated growls. And the Christmas season was moderate temperatures and steady rain. So we are grateful for everyone who's helped support the ambassadors. We had a very successful gala in October. We had an extremely successful Give to the Wolves Day in November. And we appreciate any opportunities that you have to help support the Ambassador Wolves in the upcoming year. We have an Amazon wish list. We've got some items that we just added over the weekend to help the Wolf Care team meet the needs of the Ambassador Wolves. Happy New Year, and we'll see you next year.